I have been, as I said, over here since the 1960s, but I came to know the Lord in the around the 1950, 1951 in there. And this year I'm celebrating being 70 years in the ministry, which, of course, thank God they didn't invent tape recorders and fell into that. But there was something I began to do very, very early on in terms of meditating. And I didn't know, no one gave me a course in meditation, but it's the way it happened. I came across the Luke 15, which is the story of the prodigal son, but also the story of the lost sheep and the lost coin. And I sensed, now I'm around 13, 14, and so to say I understood would be a gross overstatement, but I sensed that there is something of enormous importance in that chapter, that I'm not just dealing with another chapter in the Bible, that here is something that it resonated with me very, very deeply. But the way it began, I think I should say, it was with the elder brother of that last parable, you know, the elder brother in the story. And as I read it, as a very new Christian, I was on his side. I thought the elder brother got the short end of the stick, and I really related to his complaints. And that is how I was reading it until it dawned on me that I was on the wrong side of Jesus when I was saying that. And I often say that it was the elder brother that introduced me to the grace of God, because I realized here was a gospel that I couldn't have heard it, because I thought the elder brother was right. And therefore I realized that I had everything turned upside down, that I was on the wrong side of what Jesus was saying. And that was my introduction to grace, even though I could never have actually defined it to you at that time. But I was drawn back to that chapter. And again, the prodigal son especially, but the sheep and the lost coin, they were all saying the same thing. And as I meditated, I realized, I began to touch the love of God and realize again that this is something I hadn't been taught. This was, it said love, but really there should be another word there, because this is not love as I know love. Our love is very conditional. Whenever we say love, I love you, I love something, there's always because. There's a because to it. And here, obviously, in this chapter, I'm coming to a love where there's no because. In fact, it's the reverse of because. And these were the things I was grappling with. And then I came later on, still in my teenage, I came to 1 John chapter 4, where God is love. And I realized love is the very being of God, the very essence of God, and nothing really to do with the way we use the word love here in our world today. And it became my ministry. I have spent the last 70 years of my life telling the world that God loves them, but loves them in a way that is beyond our comprehension until we begin to look at it. And so I want to share the prodigal son with you for most of the weekend. Now, I've done this before. The book that has been mentioned is on the prodigal son, but I wrote that after I'd been meditating on the chapter for 60 years. And well, that was 10 years ago. I've learned so much since then. I never preached the same message twice, because a lot has happened since the last time I said it. And so I come to you with where I'm at today in terms of the prodigal son. And I want to start at the beginning. And the beginning is most people don't start there because it's not fun until you get into it. But in Luke chapter 15, here Jesus, verse 11, Jesus said, a man had two sons. The younger of them said to his father, give me the share of the estate that falls to me. So he divided his wealth between them. That's the most amazing verse in the whole chapter, though I've never heard anybody speak about it. We always go straight to the next. This young goes off to the far country. But he went off to the far country because of that verse. Give me the share of the estate that falls to me. So he divided his wealth between them. Let's look at it. First of all, Jesus was telling these stories for a very good reason. And they are not, what's the word? You know, when people talk about the prodigal son, it's, you know, tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree and everybody gets teary-eyed and hugs and kisses all around. Or then, you know, how sweet the shepherd goes and finds the little lamb, puts it on his neck, and everybody gets happy. Well, no, actually, we're dealing here, the Luke 15 is a war cry. The Pharisees had challenged Jesus, and this is his answer. And it's an answer that is really complete. When you've understood what he said to them, legalism doesn't have a leg to stand on. Our comprehension of God has been forever indelibly printed on our heart. Jesus, you see, Jesus is God. We sang it here and everybody was nodding, so I know you're on the same page. We are not dealing with a super prophet. We're not dealing with someone from alongside of God. We're not dealing with someone that has an unusual understanding of God. We are dealing with God himself, Amen. Personally present with us. And as the Creed says, and as Godfrey sang, he is God, very God, from very God. He is God from God. And that means when he speaks, I am hearing God himself tell me who he is. And that is the end of discussion, especially when he does it in such simple stories as you'll find in Luke 15. I know who God is. God told me right there. And in telling me who he is, then it follows immediately, I change my idea about who I am. The two go together. And what had happened, Jesus, God among us, God become human, is sitting down at table with a group of tax collectors and sinners. Sinners were the hangers-on. But tax collectors, as you might well know, were the most hated, the despised of all persons in Israel, because they were Jews. But Jews who had gone over, betrayed their people, and joined the enemy, joined Rome, who were the oppressing armies and empire. And in joining them, they were now sent back to their own people to extort from them their taxes, Roman taxes. And on top of it, they were allowed to, well, take the cream off the top. And so you had something akin to the mafia. It was a group of persons that were the fear of the people. They represented the enemy. And if you didn't do it right, they'd crush your bones. They were coming to get your taxes. And so these despised people, they were called the pariah dogs. They were called scum, filth, pigs. Jesus goes and sits with them. Well, just a minute, it's not quite true. He didn't. Started out, he said, the Pharisees who were standing there, the most religious of people, who kept every law in the book, plus 2,000 that they'd made up. And now they are watching Jesus do the unthinkable, because even a decent, nice chap in Israel would still spit at the tax collector. There was not a family in Israel that gave half an inch to a tax collector. They were out. Jesus is going to eat with them. And the Pharisees are watching. First of all, they could throw up at the sight of it. On the other hand, they're thrilled he's doing it because now they've nailed him. They've got him. But they observe something that is very important. And when they accused him at the head of the chapter, they said he receives sinners and eats with them. Those two words, received and eats, they're massive. Received, the word means in the language of the Bible, but also in what was happening here, he received them. So he didn't just eat with them, he said he received them. And the word means, how I could best illustrate it, that if your very best friend is coming to visit with you, and he said he'd be here by 4 o'clock, by 3:45, you're getting all restless and you're watching through the window. Is he coming yet? Is he coming yet? And when he does get there, you hug and you welcome him and you bring him in. And that's that word. It's received. It means to grasp, to hug, to kiss on both cheeks as they do in the Middle East, to bring in your best friend and welcome them to your house. Jesus didn't just sit down with a group of tax collectors. He actually was going around the table and hugging them and saying, boy, this is so good that you're here. But then, of course, eating. We don't know anything about eating in America. We only eat to stuff our face. So it doesn't matter. You go into any fast food place and you sit down and you're pretty close to the next table. And it's just where we don't even know who they are. We just eat. If you come with me to the third world, you'd better understand what eating is, because eating has got nothing to do with being hungry. Not in, we look at third world as sort of down from us. Third world, they're the most intelligent people I've met because they do things as we used to do them hundreds of years ago. And eating is the binding. Well, I'll tell you what, our word companion, a companion, that's a Latin word made up of 2 Latin words, com, which means with, and pan, which means bread. So a companion is someone you've eaten bread with. A friend was someone you ate with. And today in third world, if you sit at the table and you touch, that's all, you had to reach out to get it. You touch the bread of the family and you are included. You are bound into the family. They look upon it as sacred. Food is not merely a material stomach thing. It's a sacred act by which persons are bound together for life. So Jesus not only received these people, but he ate with them, which declared to the world that we have a friendship that is bound. That is, it's not just hi there. It's bound. I cannot, to the point where you will fight for this person now. You become so one with them. If they are in trouble, you will give yourself to them. And I could keep on that, the stories you hear. And when I was traveling the world, especially in the Africas, the first thing I did when I went into an area was find the paramount chief. And I would bring him a goat and I would bring him bread. And he knew what we would eat together. And as soon as we'd eaten together, he would protect me. He would be there for me anywhere I went in his territory. And the people would treat me as they treated him. We were covenanted by blood and eating. And that's what Jesus did. And I can really understand the Pharisees. I can. As I say, you didn't have to be a Pharisee. Even the most ordinary family in the Galilee would say, well, that's it, finished. If he's in cahoots with tax collectors, we don't even want to listen to him again. If Jesus had a manager who was promoting him, he would have torn his hair out. This is it. It's finished. We and you could say this actually led to the crucifixion. This is what got them. He eats. He receives. He makes covenant with tax collectors. I mean, even the synagogue agreed. Every tax collector goes to hell. We know that. Some things you don't pray about. This is for sure. And every week in the synagogue, they would read out the names of every tax collector in the area and declare they go to hell. It was just part of the synagogue service. As you worship God, you name the people that had to go to hell, the tax collectors. And Jesus sat and ate with them and seemed to have a jolly good time while he was doing it. It was amazing what was happening in this. That he receives sinners, receives them, and then eats with them. It was a scandal. God's love always has been scandalous. Scandalous. But it was God that did this. God in our humanity did this. It's God who told these stories to the Pharisees. We should get used to being scandalized. This is the way it is. He said on another occasion, Matthew 11, that he's the only one who knows the Father. Do you remember he said that? No one knows, he spoke of himself, no one knows who I am except the Father. And no one knows the Father except me. And therefore, he comes to us with unique knowledge. I mean, I'm not going to speak on it, but think about that. No one knows the Father, he said, except me. Which means you've got to face it. Then he was saying Moses didn't really know the Father. Well, it's a big mouthful to say, but that's what he was saying. He said Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, jolly good fellows, but they didn't know the Father. They had shafts of light. Now, what they said was true, but they didn't know the Father. Now, Jesus, who is the Word of the Father, you remember he's called the Word. So it means that in one word is everything the Father is. For the Father has poured himself into Jesus, and he is a co-equal with the Father, knows him intimately, personally, because, well, they're one together. And he says, no one else knows the Father. They've got a bit of knowledge here and a bit of knowledge there, but I know the Father. So I'm going to tell you what he's like. And in telling you what he's like, I'm telling you what you're like, if you only knew it. So these stories are windows into the heart of the Trinity, because God the Son is giving the stories. God the Son is not merely defending his action. He is saying what I'm doing in sitting down with these people is completely in harmony with who God is. My friendship with the scum of the earth is exactly the way Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are. That should keep you awake tonight, but this is it. And I say the Pharisees were scandalized, and they should be. They should. They lived a life of legalism, live life by law. It's what you do that God will accept you. And obviously the tax collectors have done nothing. In fact, they're in the negative. And he sits down with them. And so Jesus responds. He's answering what they said. They said with horror, he receives sinners and he eats with them. Look at him. He's sitting over there with them. Jesus began to tell the stories to the Pharisees, overheard by the tax collectors. And as I say, it was a war cry. It was throwing down the gauntlet. Say, Jesus among us, Jesus being here, God here is the stamp of God's foot. Or you could say, if you want to see the wrath of God is the incarnation. That is God coming to say, I am going to remove everything that will separate my precious human beings from me. And I'm coming. I'm stepping in. The wrath of God is God's love that reaches to stop the powers of darkness. And this is his war cry. This is who God is. Not what when he talked to the Pharisees later, he said, remember, you're like a tomb. You're full of dead men's bones. You look great on the outside. Everybody thinks you're the holiest people on the planet, but really you're rotten to the core. That's religion, as God himself said it. So he told these stories. I'll leave the shepherd and the necklace, the coin. In this story, the father is the main character. Right. Should never have been called the prodigal son. He's only one of the characters. The father is the main character because he appears when we deal with the prodigal son and when we deal with the elder brother. The father is consistently the center of this. And that verse I read shows unbelievably what this father is like. The main character. And he is, in this story, the revealing of the love of God. It begins with what that younger kid said. It is insulting to the max. It doesn't, when we read it in our Bibles, it's, I don't know, just a request he made and slides over it. No, do you realize what it was? This younger son wants out of here. He wants out of here so far that he will never have to think about his father again. He wants away from his father and the faith of his father. He wants out. And so he comes to his father. And what he really said, and it's obvious if you read it, I'm not bringing any mystery here, but most of us don't read it. We just slide over that because it doesn't seem important. But he goes to his father, and actually the elder brother had to be there too. I'll show you in a minute. But the younger brother goes to his father and he says, we've been waiting for you to die. We want our inheritance. And we just can't wait for the reading of the will. So please either drop dead now or give us the cash. That's what he was saying. He goes and he says, divide the estate, divide the inheritance. Well, you don't do that until you're dead. But the kid is saying, I can't wait for that. So let's have it done right away. I say that the elder brother was there because if you're going to divide the inheritance, the elder brother gets his portion too. And the way they worked it out in those days is from the book of Deuteronomy, that in the will, the elder brother, the oldest in the family, who was expected to take his father's place, he got 2/3 of the inheritance. And the younger brother got 1/3. And so right there, if the younger brother gets his 1/3, the older one's going to get his 2/3. And the word inheritance, it's got special meaning in the Hebrew culture. And you could translate inheritance as the life of the father. That's how they looked at it. And so the younger son is saying, divide to me your life. I want a pound of flesh. I want your blood, sweat, and tears that you put into life. And now I want to share of it. I want to turn it into cash. Give me the property. Do you realize what the kid is saying? He's not only saying, I'm out of here, but also he's saying, I've got a big journey to get far away from you, and I want you to finance it. I want you to finance my journey as far away as I can get from you. I want to be supported in everything that I'm going to do. So I want your life. Give me your life so I can take your life, everything you've done to arrive where you are in life. I give it to me so that I can now turn it into whatever I want to do. I want to take your life to finance my life. Turn your life into my plans and make it. And the most amazing verse in the Bible, maybe it says, and the Father did it. It did what? And so he takes the property, divides it, 2/3. And if a father did that, in any way, if he brought like that kind of gift to, he would attend with a blessing. And so as a Hebrew father, he would lay hands on the younger son and bless him on his journey as he gives to him 1/3 of the property, and likewise the elder brother. Let that sink in, because as I'm saying it now, after 70 years of thinking about it, it still didn't make sense to me. It's still scandalous. And yet Jesus is giving us insight, clear insight into the scandalous glory of God. I don't know why, but the word glory, well, that's the way this word in the Bible is the word in the language is doxa, and it's translated glory. Well, that is one translation of that word. Another is the radiance, the light, the shine. But if you go to the lexicons, they're the books that tell you about these words, they all say the first meaning of this word, the way it was always used first time, is opinion. And the word glory comes later on. Why in our Bibles don't they translate it opinion? Instead, they always translate it as glory. I think glory is a lot safer because no one knows what it means. But it's true. But opinion, do you realize the glory of God is in his opinion of you? That's God's glory. That's the radiance of God's beauty. The shining radiance is his opinion of you. Opinion of the tax collectors. The glory of God is not that he shuns people, he sits down with the worst of them. Because I know many of you have been taught from your earliest days that God is too holy to look upon sin. It's in Habakkuk, and I'm sure everybody reads that once a day. But in there's this conversation going on between Habakkuk and God. And Habakkuk said, the prophet said, you are too holy to look at sin. But nobody ever reads the next verse when God says, no, that's not true. I'm up to my ears in looking at sin. But nobody ever talks about that because it fits their theology to say that he doesn't look at sin. But that's the glory of God. I mean, feel it. That's the glory of God, that he not only looks at sin, but his opinion of it is, I love you, and I come to sit with you and make covenant with you, and I'll never leave you nor forsake you. That's the glory of God. His opinion of you. It's the motivation behind everything the Father has just done. It's his opinion of those two boys. My opinion of those two boys is slap them. And that's what I mean. You see, I look at God as scandalous. I've got a list of people he's not supposed to love. But God's opinion is totally other than ours. He took his life. He took his life work, and he divided it, put it into the hands of two sons that were bent on doing the opposite of what their father. Those sons don't know their father. They've been with him every day, but they look to their father with legalistic glasses. And the younger son saw a father that he didn't want to be around. And the older son saw a father that he was trying to please, because neither of them saw the father loved them just as they were. And so here he's taken his life that's got his blood, sweat, and tears on every square inch of it, and he puts it into the hands of two sons that are going to do with it the opposite of everything he is. They don't know him. They don't want to know him either. They're antagonistic to his purpose. But despite that, he invests himself into them. And this is straight from the voice of God himself. So you can't misinterpret it. He gave them the freedom to hurt him. You get that? Because he knows what they're going to do with his money. He gives them the freedom to hurt him. He gives them the freedom to pursue their own futility of their darkened minds. Each in their own way, they're going to go into the darkness and pay for it. But he gives them the freedom to do that. But why does he? Well, he's giving the money to these kids. Why? Because he is determined to join them in their darkness. So the way they are abusing him will actually turn to their salvation. That's the gospel. The two sons see what they're doing as separating away from their father, disconnecting from the father. Goodbye, father. That's what they see. But the father wills, it's intentional. He purposes with a breathtaking plan, really. He wills to relate to them in their darkness, in their brokenness, in their futility. I'm going to be there with you. I'll never leave you. You won't be able to get away from me. Yeah, he financed their lives. And every time, especially the younger son, every time he laid $1 down to buy a cup of coffee, that dollar came from his dad. And the dollar was saying, I'm still with you. I'm still with you. Every time he went into a bar and said, drinks all round, it was his dad's money on the counter that says, I'm still with you. I'll never leave you, never forsake you. I'm with you, whatever you do. Every time he went into a brothel, it was his dad's money on the counter that said, I'm still with you. I'm not leaving you. Whether the kids understood that, that's beside the point. It was happening. And in the mystery of God's love, there is no place I can go, no depth to which I can disappear into, no darkness too thick. He never leaves me. That's the incarnation. That is God saying, I'm coming. You see, the incarnation has destroyed forever the idea that God is separated from us. Yeah. And God joined us. He became one of us, but not just one of us. He became us this side of the fall, which means he became us inside our darkness, the lies, the ignorance, everything that we had concocted about God that isn't true, came right inside it. Does the man on the street know that? I doubt it. Do they didn't know that in church? I doubt it. But he did, and he is, and that's the way it is. Which means that from my deepest, dirtiest gutter, I can name Jesus and discover he's there. He's in my darkness. He'd been there all the time. That's where he lives with us. Jesus is illustrating to us what agape is. As I said earlier, love in the Bible is not love as we understand it. Agape. Agape describes a love that is not known on this earth. In fact, in 1 John 3, he says, behold what manner of love the Father has bestowed upon us. That is an unfortunate translation. What is translated, what manner, is really what foreign kind. So he's saying, behold, what foreign kind of love the Father has bestowed upon us. It's as if when you're in the tundra of Alaska, you see an orchid growing on a tree, and you say, what on earth is an orchid doing growing in the frost of that's it. Well, a foreign kind of flower growing here. What kind of love has God bestowed upon us? You won't find the definition in a dictionary. God's love is unique. That God's love is the being of God, the essence of who God is. God's love is not something that we have on earth. We have the Greek word, is not in the Bible, but the Greek word for what we call love today is eros. And eros is the absolute reverse of agape. Agape says, I give myself to you. What he did to the kids. I give myself. It's a self-giving love. Eros means, by definition, that I love you because you give me pleasure. Big because. And you give me pleasure, and if you stop giving me pleasure, I'll find someone else who will. It's a love of because. It's a love that it's all about me. I don't love you for you, I love you for me. And no. And that's why you won't find it in the Bible. I think the Holy Spirit forbade it to be put there. Agape. You see, when I come to legalism, when I come to religion, I find they actually do not, well, as Jesus said, they didn't know God, but also not only didn't know God, they've invented one that they think he should be. And that false God of religion. And you can find it right here in America. You don't have to go looking in primitive places, pagan places. The false God of religion, you could sum him up. They won't mention the word love at all. The false God of religion, they love the word sovereign. They love the word law giver. He's the sovereign judge. He's going to punish you. He's also a narcissist. I know what I just said was a mistake. If you look at a dictionary, what a narcissist is, it means they've got an exaggerated sense of self-importance. That's a narcissist. They also have a desperate need for admiration. Also, they're absolutely unable to have compassion on anybody else. The God I was introduced to by the church in America, in Britain, was that. No question. The God that Christians worshipped had only a sense of self-importance. I know this is shocking. Stay with me. That a God that I was introduced to as a teenager was a God that he filled his own universe. I was of no importance to God at all. In fact, I had the impression, and I won't say the church taught it, but they sure gave me the impression that Jesus came to save me from God.
That's right. Yeah.
Because God was so taken up with himself. As I said, he couldn't look at sin. And therefore I was of no importance to him. And also that God, and please stay with me, but that God had this desperate need for admiration. And so all I had to do was tell God how great he was. That was it. That was praise and worship, to tell God how good he is, how great he is, how wonderful he is. And again, no, I'm left out of this. I just exist to tell him how good he is. And he comes over to me as the one that has importance, that fills the whole universe. But you see, as for love, there's no love for me. There's no love, in fact, for anyone. And anyone who came into the church would sure tell you that they were not accepted. They were not wanted. And they were reflecting this God that had been invented by religion in their darkness. No love, no relationship. The whole of the God that I was raised with was a God who lived in a courtroom. And it was all about laws broken, judgment to be given. And I come to the Bible, especially this chapter, and I find it's all about relationship. Nothing, no word of punishment. And in all the parables, I mean, why doesn't the shepherd club the wretched sheep? Yeah, take it in other, and the father, and especially when we get to the elder brother, they had in this time in Israel, they had jails on property. So in a ranch, you would have a jail to put wicked sons until they got their act together. But it's not mentioned in this. I had to tell you that. It's not in the story because God's not into that, you see. He's a relationship. You try and fit relationship into a courtroom. It doesn't work. And it's relationship. It doesn't exist to scare us. God doesn't exist in order to threaten us with punishment. God, he's into sitting down with us at our worst and telling us and communicating to us his love for us at our worst, and then taking the initiative that only he can take to pick us up out of our worst and carry us to his best. Far cry from religion. So you see, it's no wonder that the persons who have only been raised with a false image of God, they see themselves as worthless. And they really do. Worthless. I've had opportunity in recent days, actually, talking to people that are extremely religious, good people, nice people, decent people. But you get to this area and they will cringe, even say to some of them, you're a good man. And they cower away. They don't want to even admit that because God might be mad at me. How can you say I'm good? I've sinned. I've done everything wrong and God can't stand beside of me and God's going to judge me. How can you say I'm good? People who say I can't talk to the Father because I'm not worthy. And so I sneak a prayer to Jesus because he sort of saves me from the Father. There was a very, very famous evangelist. Every one of you would know the evangelist who came to San Antonio. And I went to the meeting. I just wanted to hear what he had to say. And he stood there. And so this is firsthand, I heard it. He said, God the Father hates you. He's disgusted with you. He despises you. You're nothing but a corrupt heap of sin. So Jesus came to save you. And he said, he'll cover you with his righteousness and sneak you into heaven before the Father can stop him. That's a theology of a great portion of the world today. And so right there, you've got a Father and a Jesus who are having family problems. They obviously disagree. No, God the Father makes himself completely known in Jesus. When I mean, Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. He didn't come to save us from the Father, but to the Father.
Yes.
Well, broken relationships, love repairs. Love will always do that. Love restores. Love never takes away freedom. Love never threatens you. Love never makes you afraid. If there's no freedom, then there's no relationship. Well, the moment you say you can't go there, well, then you put change. There's no relationship. And so, yeah, they rejected him, the two boys. But he responds with this incredible love and invests himself in their darkness and said, if you go into the darkness, I'm coming with you. So you have to this word agape. What is God's love? And I mean, agape doesn't help much because, well, you know, it isn't human kind of love, but what is it? What is? I've spent my life answering that question. What is God's love? And the moment you really get your foot into it, agape, real love, is a verb. You know what I mean? It's not a noun. Love is always action. The very first thing I see about agape is it is the divine, or it's the God, continual movement toward us. There's never a time when God retracts and says, well, when you get your act together, no. He never stops moving toward us. And his intention is union. That is to bring us together with him. Relationship, removing from us anything that would separate. Now, I want you to really think about that, because I've asked a number of people, why did Jesus come? What was he after? And they all, it's been 100%. They've said he came to deal with sin. So then if Adam hadn't sinned, Jesus wouldn't have come, because Jesus is only the footnote to Adam's sin. You follow me? Whereas the Bible, if you read all of it, teaches us that before the foundation of the world, before Adam fell, the plan was already that Jesus was going to come.
Right.
Because the purpose of God in creating us was to join us together with him in an unfathomable, breathtaking union where he would really be one with us and us with him, and that we would be part of the Holy Trinity family. We would join the dance of God's love. That's why he made us. So sin is the footnote.
Yeah, that's good. Come on.
Yeah, the purpose was that we should, I say, dance with God. And so now man sins, well, God's love doesn't stop. You think we can sin and God say, oops, we made a mistake. No. When man sinned, God didn't blink. You read the story in in Genesis chapter 3. And as soon as man sinned, immediately the father said, I'm going to we'll crush the head of the snake and we'll deal with this. God is not, I'll say God is not put off with sin. That's not altogether right. I don't want to give the impression he doesn't care. But to give it the importance of the church has become obsessed with sin. Yeah. It's as if the creation of the world began when Adam sinned, and Jesus came to deal with that. And what did Jesus do then? Well, he dealt with Israel and went back to heaven because they don't know the whole plan. The plan was from the very beginning that every last one of us should be united to God the Father through Jesus the Son. He didn't become incarnate. He didn't come to us to deal with sin. He was coming anyway. That was the plan. And coming to take hold of us humans. I mean, really, can you get this? You're human. You're human, which means you're a begun creature. There was a time when you weren't. You're begun creature. And we're saying now that you were created by the Creator not to be just a begun creature. That's where we started. But you are created to then be taken, adopted is the word, brought into a relationship with the Holy Trinity through the Son who came to get you. And that was going to happen. When man sinned, that's still going to happen. Only now we've got a lot to overcome to get there. So, agape is that continual movement of God, seeking that union which the heart of God passionately desired and was the reason for creation, to bring us to him, to have relationship. Now, sin is a right, well, we deal with that, but we've got to get to the union. And so, have you ever thought of this? I've got to bite my tongue or we'd be here all night. But, you know, just before Jesus was arrested, I mean, immediately before, a couple of hours before, he sits down and talks to the 12 in the upper room. Do you remember that? John 14, 15, 16, 17. So, I mean, we're right there, and he's telling them what's going to happen. This is, I could almost get up from here. Yes. He never mentions sin once. So he's about to go to the cross. I mean, tick-tock is a matter of minutes. They're going to betray, he's going to be arrested. So, and he's going to tell the disciples, no, this is what we're getting into. And he doesn't mention sin. The whole thing is about when this is over, like 3 days' time, you will know that I am in the Father. You are in me, I am in you. Abide in me, and I will abide in you. And when he prayed, Father, you know, he says that they may know that I am in you. They will be in us. We shall, no mention of sin. That might give you a clue that he was not obsessed with sin. He was coming for a bigger thing, something much bigger, to bring you right into the family of God so you could look at the Father face to face because you're one with Jesus. Amen. That's what he came to. That's agape, you see. Love seeks us. Love is the movement of God. We don't seek him. We don't even know we should. Sin means we're in the dark. And I mean, it's a profound darkness. You can't see anything. We're blind, but not like physical blindness, which means all the other senses kick in. And a blind person physically knows there's another world out here. No, this is a blindness so profound. You believe this is seeing. You believe this is seeing, but it's blind, it's dark, you don't know. And there's nothing in you that would seek after God. You don't know that anyway, the God you worship doesn't want you to seek him. So he comes to us. He took the initiative. He came into our darkness. He searches for us, however deep the thing we've fallen into. He comes into our darkness. That's the meaning of the incarnation. And in that darkness, we believe the lie, but we think it's truth. We're in the dark, but we believe that that's light. The word, I can't find a better one, but we're in sin, a person is demented. It's a dementia. It's the most tragic thing. That's probably the worst disease that can ever be in the human race. And yet, do you realize we don't know our parent? God made us and we don't know him. In fact, we're scared of him. Sin primarily is a mental disease caused by Satan's lie. We don't know who Isaiah said it. He said, even a donkey knows his master.
Yes.
An ox knows where to get food. But you don't know. You've forgotten who your dad is. Forgotten who your creator is. We're secularized to the point where life is no place for God. That's who we are. We're demonized in some cases. Yet this agape comes right there, meets us. Tax collectors are sitting at a table. That's where he meets us. He refuses to be God without us. You ever thought about that? God refuses to be God without us. Why else would why else would God come and not only take our humanity and live with us right where we are, but you realize he never shucked it off. When he rose from the dead, he still had a human body. When he ascended, to this day, right now as I'm talking, Jesus has a human body. He'll never, because when he went into the Father's presence in the ascension, human body, he took us with him. He's the guarantee that I'm face to face with the Father.
Yes.
So he'll never put off that human body because he has committed himself to be one of us, while never ceasing to be God. So he who is God forever is also you and me forever. There's nothing God has that he doesn't want to share with you. So agape is that limitless desire of the Trinity to be with us, limitlessly seeks to do us good, to care for us. And that is. See, love is the attribute of God. Do you know what an attribute is? Well, it means that which something is that makes that something what it is. That is, okay, a ball is round. Round is the attribute. You can't have a square ball. You follow me?
Yeah.
A ball must be round. Now, the ball can be red, green, yellow, spotted. That doesn't matter. That's an accidental thing. A ball is round. It can be as big as the Empire State Building, round, and it's a ball. The moment it isn't round, it isn't a ball. You got it? Love is God's is his essence, attribute.
Yes.
God is love, doesn't have any, he is it. Which means God cannot be anything else but love. That's why everything God is and does comes through the lens of love. And therefore, that is the limitless desire of the Trinity. Okay, put it this way, there's no other God that you haven't met yet that's going to, bare his teeth and say, I've been waiting for you. There's only one God, and his attribute is love. End of discussion. He limitlessly always seeks to do us good. Or as Paul said, if God be for us, do you realize he loves the sound of your name? You ever thought? He has a smile as big as the universe when you mention his name, your name. And that's in the Bible. Did you know that? Do not fear. I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. You are precious in my sight. You are honored, and I love you. Did you know that was in the Bible? God speaking to you. That's what he says. God love, the intimate relationship, sharing with you in every detail of your life, all the secrets of your life. You're not a passing stranger. You're his child. Only this false God wants you to grovel and cry unworthy. You belong. You're included.
Yes.
You're mine. You're precious. You're my treasure. Even though you've gone off into the darkness, he's there with you. Still saying the same thing. He will not call you by the name of your darkness.
That's good.
And he owns his love.
Yes, he does.
So you can't buy it. He owns it. Nor can you get rid of it. He owns it. That's quite a thought. You're stuck with it. Well, I think I've said enough for tonight. The love of God not only will change you, is in the process of changing you. We've never lived until we've seen the love of God.
Right.
And that's the truth.
Yeah.
The love of God is not tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree. God's love comes into the most messed up, screwed up, darkened mind and life and literally changes them totally. I deal mostly with people like you, and I see that miracle. Cheryl, my wife, is a prison minister, and she sits down on death row and shares the same message with people you and I could never talk to, and watches them transformed by the love of God. The love of God covers all. And I'll pick up this story tomorrow morning. Thank you. Amen.